Hey, I am a previous former FBI analyst, but now I'm going. My title is a Logic to Intuition Integration Advisor, and I'm serving as a future self strategist to help folks step into a path that's more in alignment with themselves. And the previous three lessons that we've been together on, I will just briefly go through those. Rebecca, do you by chance would be able to bring up the slides, maybe? Oh, perfect. Okay. And a little bit more background about me. Aside from being a former FBI analyst, which I integrate into my practice and helping folks, is I also practice an intuitive modality called the Akashic Records. I will put that in the chat. But what that does is it enables folks to connect to the wisest part of themselves through essentially a private sacred radio station. I open the records, which is your soul's energetic library of possibilities, and enable folks to connect to their gut. And then once that happens, I help folks then strategically, logically map those insights into next grounded steps. But that is my background in a nutshell. And want to just sort of briefly recap what we have done so far. So the folks, if you're just joining us today, oh, thanks, Rebecca. Here's what we'll be talking about today. Briefly do a rundown of the three sessions prior, which is recognizing your inner signals, interpreting your inner signals. And then last week we had those inner signals meet up with logical thought so we can start to take grounded, calm certainty. Have that grounded, calm certainty in our next steps. And then the last step, which we'll be talking about today, is taking action. And I recall from a our last session had a great question around, well, what if the situation you're put in, you didn't actively or proactively get into that challenge, or recall something to the effect of, it reminded me of if you were let go from a job or you were fired for some reason, how do you approach that circumstance? And I will be talking about that, which was a great question. And then would love to talk with you all who are here live. We're going to have a couple icebreakers, and then going to talk about the nature of coherent action, and then how to step into alignment from there on the steps that we've already talked about, and then just sort of capturing everything what we learned today, and we'll close out. So with that in mind, let's go on to the next slide. So here is the just a overview of my interlogic process. So week one, we did recognize, which I talked about. Week two is really honing in on your physical, emotional, and intuitive messages and asking, what are these insights really telling me? And then last week, we talked about how to look at your inner decision process and the outer decision process. And bringing those together and make sure they're in sync with the heart and mind together. And then today, as I mentioned, we'll be talking about taking action, different ways to approach that. I'll be providing sort of a overview summary of what aligned action can feel like and what the nature of it is. So next slide, Rebecca. Okay, just an overview. These were some of the signals that we talked about during the first session. On the left side, you'll see intuitive signals, which could run from physical sensations, synchronicities, energy shifts, gut hunches, all those different things. And then for this particular instance, on the right side, you'll find 10 logical signals, which I describe your intuition or gut sets the big picture, it scopes the problem set, and then the logical side helps with execution and strategy of the direction your gut is taking you in. So these are just a capture rundown of those common signals that you can look at. Next slide. And then from there, this is the approach to recognizing your inner signals. The body is very important in recognizing your inner signals. It's like a tuning fork to help not only capture but notice those internal signals. And then on the right side, you'll see the ideal sort of situation or circumstances for recognizing your inner signals. Essentially, you take away from this slide is creating calm, either physically in an environment that you can be in, or having that sense of inner calm. And that really helps you tune in to those inner signals. Next slide. These are certain situations where you can start to notice those inner signals. So if you're applying to jobs, start to notice, does this job resonate with me? What's the fit? Am I fit? Not only logically do my skills maybe translate, but how does it feel in my body? Do I get excited about the job responsibilities? Another sort of example on starting to recognize your inner signals is the amount of, well, let's go number five, which I'll talk about a little bit later today, which is urgency versus clarity. When you're in a state of urgency, there is, I'll say, an opportunity to distort your inner signals where what you're being provided can be confusing or maybe out of alignment with who the best version of you is coming forward. So again, having that calm nature within yourself is going to help with clarity. But these are just certain situations where you can start to bring more awareness to the inner intelligence that's within you. Next slide, Rebecca. Next, we had a lot of great questions. I know Mr. Phillips had some fantastic questions on the chakra system. As I noticed he's here today, which is great. But this slide is essentially just to give you a status check on where your inner signals are taking you. It can help you evaluate whether you might be balanced or in alignment or out of balance or out of alignment. But these are just some areas to consider. If you're familiar with the chakra system, it's very helpful, especially as you start to put more attention on your body sensations. Next slide. Next, we did go into the part about not only recognizing inner signals but interpreting them. And on this slide is taking those interpretations and putting a little bit further on how you start to notice how your inner decision process and your outer decision process start to line up. So right now we're looking at the outer decision process, which is essentially everything you see, hear, feel, touch, smell, like your five senses that are anchored in the present moment. Oh, thanks, Megan. It took me a while to want to reflect on this graphic because the bottom half is my Akashic Records work. And what that is when you are in the present moment, you have that intention, the attention, the engagement. You start to observe your inner signals and your inner intelligence, and then you start to become attuned to them, and then you start to synchronize your body and have that line up with your thoughts. So as you go along, and we'll talk about this later when you start to take action, the inner decision process and the outer decision process are constantly giving you information and data points. So I look at intuition and your gut as another data point, but noticing how to uh, become more aware of it, collect it, synthesize it, and then have it complement your logical thinking is really important. So this graph that I put together through my own work as an prior FBI analyst and my Akashic Records expertise is sort of my purpose, which is to show and teach others how to have more agency and sovereignty over their life by having logic and intuition come together as one so you can step into alignment. Next slide, Rebecca. Okay, and then this was one example that I had. So felt energy, if you're not familiar with sort of the felt sense nature of things, it can be a feeling or vibe that you get over a person, place, thing, or idea, but essentially brings a sense of magnetism to a thought form. And when you feel, for me, the example I best give is when I was doing my analysis at the FBI, I could feel, and I was in flow, I could feel thoughts and phrases. And I just knew when I was making an analytic judgment that this was the conclusion that needed to be voiced at that point in time. And then as you go into step number two, you can start to notice, where's my mindset at when I'm looking at this thing that I'm feeling out. And then step number three is looking more at the outer decision process and starting to bring strategery to that inner alignment that you're feeling within the body. And then once your inner decision process and outer decision process are in sync, you can continue that forward momentum and build your feedback mechanisms. So step number four, what I would describe as following those energetic breadcrumbs means you are continuing to be present in the moment and feeling out your way through the decision-making process. So for example, if you make one decision like if you're leaving a job, for example, and you decide to leave, then you might think, well, I really want to apply to this company because they felt exciting to me. And you keep reintroducing energetic awareness into your decision-making process. And that's what generally I describe as following the energetic breadcrumbs. It becomes easier once you start to follow your gut and the energetic infrastructure that is around you. Next slide. Okay, now we're gonna do the icebreaker. I don't know, we don't have buzzers, but that was the image that came through when I was putting together. So, based on the sort of recap that I provided so far, from lesson number one or session number one, um, put in the chat window what do you feel you need to recognize in your life right now? Well, let me rephrase. If there's a life situation or career situation that you're experiencing right now, what do you feel is one thing you can do to start recognizing your inner signals? And would love to hear if anyone was here during our first session. If you were here, feel free to put in the chat window. What is one step you can take to start to recognize slow down? Yes, and uh-huh. Yeah, that's fantastic. Yeah, I'm gonna give a double heart emoji on that one. More time. Yep, allow more time for silence. Yep, stop and take deep breaths. Yeah, fantastic. Slow down. Yeah, feel yeah, oh, these are great. Um, Quiet time, pause. Yeah, fantastic. Um, check in with self, slow down. Yeah, okay, this is amazing. Yeah. So, what I'm gathering is essentially slowing down your nervous system to where you can start to recognize what you are interpreting in the environment that you're in. And I'll talk about that a little bit more. Self-reflection. Yeah, Tiffany, that's great. What the step of taking action, what we're going to talk about today, is a lot about nervous system regulation and being mindful of that. And when you are grounded in your actions and how you feel and think about the decisions that you're going to make, you're stepping more into alignment. Yep. Yeah, not second you're guessing yourself. Oh, Aaron, that's a fantastic point, and I will hit on that in a moment. That's a key component on taking action is self-trust. And it is very important as you start to become more in alignment. Let's see. I think that no, that's I'm gonna keep going. You all had some fantastic questions. I was gonna ask anything about the second or third session, but let's go forward. Rebecca, can you go on to the next slide? So this is the material that we're going to talk about today. And the end goal, action is not really the end goal with um, stepping into alignment. It's more about recalibrating that feedback loop between your inner decision process and your outer decision process. Action is just really just the outcome. And so as you start to refine how your body complements your mind, it will create the outcome that's for your highest good, for the best version of you. Um, so as you step into alignment, what you're doing is you're consistently refining your attention, you're refining your intention, you're sharpening your attention, you're improving future attunement, and you're essentially strengthening your internal integrity with yourself. And that allows sustainability. And a sense of ease as you move forward. So just want to set the scene of the material for taking action. Within the visual that you see here, on the left side is kind of like the opposite of what everyone put in the chat window. So if you're in a situation where you have impulsive action, it is essentially more or less one could assume that your logical mind is running a lot of simulations on keeping you safe. And that's okay, but also in that moment, and also with area number two, which is force action, and which I'll get into in a moment. But in the impulsive action, you could say generally your mind is trying to keep you safe, where there is additional data points within yourself that you could be using to complement your logical mind running these simulations. So as you in this situation with the impulsive action on this left column here, as you start to notice that you are being reactive or feeling very much not your true nature, which is a calm, peaceful, confident individual, you can start to use the signals from your body to help rebalance and recalibrate your actions. Similarly, in area number two, in the middle column, feeling forced, like you have to do something. So should is energetically is a approach which can put you into a place of that's not in alignment with yourself. So when you start to develop and strengthen your trust with yourself, you can have more of a sense of that internal integrity and stability within yourself, where you can easily make decisions that you feel confident around. And if you don't feel like you're in a situation to make a decision, you can start to notice how your body feels around it. And then while I get into the next lesson, start to love yourself to have more inner coherence and resonance with this is how I feel in the moment. It's okay to have like a different opinion or to want to communicate something differently, but knowing that you're giving yourself grace in the moment if you're feeling forced in something and taking action that feels right in your body, but also makes sense in the moment. And then related to that, the last sort of end state, if we're talking about, the ultimate goal, is this coherent action. It is, and what this looks like is you are feeling calm, confident. Everything feels easy. It is, you're excited. You feel expansive, but also safe. And I know in our last session, in the aligned session, we talked about this. What does alignment actually feel like? So you're feeling strong, you're feeling like you can solve any problem. You're using information from your body, you're using information from your mind, and having it all come together as one. And that is essentially coherent action, where you have more agency and sovereignty over everyday decisions, especially if they're super challenging. So, with that in mind, let me pause. Does anyone have any questions on this visual on three kinds of action when you're in alignment or out of alignment? Okay, great. I'm glad that was straightforward. Good to know. Let's go then. Let's go on to the next slide. And this goes back to Aaron's comment about listening to your gut and not second guessing myself. And we also had a great question last week. I actually copied and pasted of what about when you're not contemplating a proactive move, but you are thrown into a situation and have to deal with an uncomfortable place to be? That was a statement by someone who attended our line session, and that really prompted a great lesson that I wanted to hit on with this visual. So the goal of this visual is um, you're not choosing the situation that you're in with if you're placed in something, but you're choosing how to meet the situation. And that's really another key pillar or teaching component of taking action that's in alignment. And how to do that is having self-love stabilize the I would say forward movement through the decision-making process. So, for example, if you are feeling uncomfortable about, the interview process, or about to, not sure how to 100% talk about your skills in a certain way on your resume or something, uh, essentially where you're in a state of um, dysregulation with the nervous system, or not feeling confident, you can start to use this sort of self-love, as I call it, stabilization process. So first, we want to start to, again, this is more toward the inner decision process, observe and regulate the nervous system. So you can start to ask questions like self-love questions like, what is happening in my body right now? Am I feeling constraint or constriction? Am I feeling like I want to get out of this uncomfortable situation, like flight or fight, fight or flight? But what happens when you start to observe and regulate your nervous system, you're able to have this neutrality state. And I know we talked about this during the last time, is neutrality is very important as you start to observe and interpret your inner signals. Um, so another question of a self-love question that you can ask is, can I breathe before I interpret my inner signals? Can I take a moment to create space to interpret those inner signals? Next, another step you can do is um, separating signal from the story that your mind might be showcasing. So I mentioned before, your body's giving signals, but your mind often runs simulations on keeping you safe. Um, so making sure that you have these self-love questions of what is the signal, what is this narrative loop, and is fear also hitting home that fear feels very urgent, whereas intuition is steady and grounded. So this is a segue I want to point to with item number two, which is in the center of this visual. Having a sense of inner awareness in the present moment helps take easier steps forward and take that action. So if you shrink sort of the problem set that you're in to 20 minutes ahead, 30 minutes ahead, where if you have a big problem that you're trying to solve, you want to shrink the timeline of basically uh, shrinking the data points that you have to consider and to take a decision or make a decision and move forward and take action. So this is essentially simplifying the process to create more self-love within yourself. So sometimes when we're feeling overwhelmed, we can feel like the future is threatening. So you have anxiety maybe come through, or if you're reflecting about the past, you might have depression come through, for example. And if we shorten the timeline in which we want to fix that problem, we can focus more on the present moment and we can ask ourselves, such as, what's going to keep me internally peaceful right now? That is one question you can ask yourself and recalibrate to help you have your body and mind become more in sync. Um, Also, this last area I just want to hit home on is keeping yourself in alignment and responding to all the different data sources that are coming your way. So what that looks like, we already mentioned in the chat, is speaking calmly, going slow, keeping yourself grounded in the present moment, and maintaining that internal coherence. And I have this visual of a tree because as you start to recognize inside yourself that you are noticing your gut and where it is leading you, you can let your mind you can let your mind relax. So when you start to trust your gut, you can let the information that you were logically thinking through um, start to feel like it's comfortable, like it's easy, instead of taking you out of alignment and making things feel crazy or anxious or that sort of thing. So as you start to do that, you essentially start to build roots and a foundation inside yourself where you become more centered. And as you become more centered, you'll essentially glide through decision making in a very calm, flow-like state. And so this is very important. The self-love maintains this inner sanctuary as you start to move from decision to decision to decision. And it gives essentially for me, and when I teach my clients, it gives a warm blanket of comfort and safety so you can start to move into the more expansive part of you. Um, and with that, let me just pause on this slide. Does anyone have any questions that I can answer? All right, great. Well, it's sounding like everything's straightforward. No questions in the chat, so that's good. We'll go on to the next slide. So I touched on this briefly in our last session. As we start to take action and we notice the different kinds of action that are available to us, either if we are um, uh, impulsive or we are having, or maybe we're forced into something, we don't really want to do something, uh, or we're in that ultimate state, we're in coherent action, knowing those types of action, and then the introduction of more self-love and having the feminine energy within us come forward, um, we will be able to take these red flags and green lights a little bit easier, which I'll touch on in a moment. Stereo. Yeah. So, Dennis or Denise, yes, I will talk about that now, actually. So you got here just in time. Um, so with we'll look on the red flags first. So we'll go with let's see. Let's go with um all right. Let's go with number two. So the red flag that you can keep in mind is if you are maybe late to an interview and you're very anxious about it. Maybe you start to sweat and your thinking is putting you in yourself in a state of worry and fear. What you can do is first, you can apply the lesson that we just talked about, that self-love approach, and start to notice your body in the current moment. So then your inner decision process comes online, start to give you additional data points. So then your internal GPS system becomes rewired to where you feel calmer. You are able to uh, realize that if I'm just theoretically saying, if the employer really wants you, maybe they're open-minded, but you're already late, so you realize that. And if you have your body calm you down, you can finally get to your destination, maybe to that interview in a very calm state. Your energy is visible, you are positive, and you'll do a much better job at the actual interview. And hopefully, it may give a better impression to the interviewer. So that is one, taking this from theory to practice. So great question of how you can have your inner decision-making process complement you as if you are in a disconnected thinking state. So on this left column, and happy to provide this image later, are just some situations, scenario of when you're taking action that you can start to recognize that you are out of alignment. Whereas on the opposite side, the green light is the solution. So the solution is if you were running late, you have more one word you could use is somatic awareness, where you bring that those inner signals to catch up to this uncomfortable moment that you're having. But what's happening is when you start to bring that somatic awareness to the decision-making process, you can start to have that, what I would describe is um, that self-trust that everything's going to be okay. Um, That's just one example that I can give, but let me just pause there. What is a maybe Denise, is there a situation, since you asked that great question, that you see on the screen? Is there a red flag that you may be experiencing right now? Or and you don't have to answer per se, but if you're welcome to, if something comes up, or let me ask you this. Does that help answer your question? Maybe so. Uh, Okay, hopefully. All right. Hopefully that answered your question on how to bring these concepts into action. Um, but what we're going to do is next, we're going to start to practice how to bring this theory more into action. Let me see, there's one other example. I think this covers it. But yeah, before we go on to the next slide, because these are some other situations that you can use. Does anyone have any questions on this information? And happy to send you all this image later so you can take a look. Okay. Um, oh, Tammy, yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, that definitely can come up. Is there a certain question you have around that, the toxic positivity that you're pointing at?
I was just thinking of when you were talking about like this is all gonna work out. It's like, is it?
Oh.
Like, so I think most recently for me is based on like getting laid off and being unemployed, which probably will work out in some form, but obviously it's not necessarily you can't be tied to like how your ideal.
Right. Correct. Yeah. So this goes to, I don't know, I guess Ada or had a, yes, another question. So Tammy, to build on what you said, we had another question here. Are green flags a sign that you're meant to be where you are? Yes. So when you start to move forward and you're bringing your inner decision process and your outer decision process together, the green flag is essentially states that feel easy, that you're yourself, that you are confident and self-trusting, and in a state of self-love that you can um, continue to take action and navigate any sort of problem set that you're encountering. So yes, the green side is the go light to keep moving forward in that direction. Um, yeah, so okay, good point. So when you're taking these concepts into action, let me give an example um, of what a previous client that I work with. So okay, so one example that comes to mind is I was helping a business owner decide um, what direction she needed to go in her business. And she was having trouble trusting herself and her gut and the direction she was going. She knew that she could do a better job at her work, and she knew she needed to maybe learn a couple new skills, maybe develop some new relationships with other business owners so she could come together and collaborate on a project, but she didn't quite know how to gain clarity on where her gut was taking her. So what we did was essentially um, this happened through an Akashic record reading, but what happened was I was able to give her permission and an opportunity for her to notice what she was already feeling in her body, but she didn't quite know how to uh, have it come together with what she was seeing on the outside and what she was thinking on how to improve her business. So we talked about different ways that she could strengthen her somatic practices of recognizing her inner signals and, in particular, interpreting those inner signals. So she was very good at noticing her physical sensations and her emotions, but there was room to gain a better way to notice her intuitive messages. And so I essentially advised her on how to start to notice her intuitive messages and to interpret them. And as you start to interpret those for her intuitive messages, she was able to strategize what actions she could take. And as she started to do that, she stepped more into this path that felt right for her. And she was able to make business decisions. She was able to have more energy with her family and her other priorities. But essentially, what happened was she was able to pivot into a version of herself where she was combining what she was processing on the inside and what she was seeing externally. So she was able to continue to move forward and take action based on these different data points. Does that help, Denise? Maybe if you could put in the chat. Sure, Belma. So, um, so in a way, synchronicities and coincidences are similar. I would put synchronicities more in the you could put them in like if you are familiar with how energy works, um, there's like this highway of information that's always available to you, but you can't see, hear, touch, feel. And as energy starts to align with how you're resonating, you will start to attract opportunities to you that are more in sync with who you are and how you're resonating within yourself and in the environment. So synchronicities and coincidences, I would say pretty much are very similar. Synchronicities to me have more of a flavor of more toward intuition and energy centric concepts. Does that help, Elma? Okay, they're very similar though. With the sake of time, let's go on to this last example, and this will hit on oh, okay, yeah, Denise, oh, let me answer the so that was the last question. Uh uh so ironically, what she did to the question was how did the business owner start to recognize the somatic signals? Um she created uh, different, when I advised her, we worked on different ways to not only create an environment. This is an important question, so it relates to the next slide. She created an environment where she was able to slow down. So her home life was conducive to a calm state, the vibe of where she lived, also the relationships that she had available to her. She started to have friendships that were more peaceful, and the energy from that, she was able to start to slow down a little bit more. So she created essentially an environment not only within her home, but her relationships and her decisions where she could bring more attention and awareness to what her body was saying because she wasn't erratic and fearful all the time. Next them, yes, Emily. Someone. Okay, good. I'm glad this is helpful, Emily. Denise, that's the short version, short answer to your question. Happy to talk more offline, but hopefully that's helpful. Next slide, Rebecca. We're just going to go through some final um, uh, status checks on this last step of taking action. So we go on to the next slide. So we talked about this in our Align session last week of different scenarios. I want to really hit home on the third scenario, which everyone voted on last week to talk about. So as you start to have opportunities that can put you down this path of feeling expansive and exciting, but you also want to feel safe. Um, I just want to hit home that there are certain questions that you can ask yourself as you start to practice this more on your own. So, for example, for the step of bringing more, recognizing your inner signals, you can start to ask, as you practice this, you can ask yourself, am I trusting my body more as I am starting to notice my physical sensations? my emotions a little bit with neutrality and my intuition. As you start to ask this question, am I trusting my body more? You can develop a relationship with your inner decision process a little bit more. Next, in the interpretation step, you can ask yourself, can I differentiate fear from intuition more clearly? So, as you start to develop, refine and develop that step, you can start to practice what does fear feel like? What does intuition feel like? And gain that clarity. Next, in the align step, you can ask yourself, um, do I feel less urgent in my decision making? Do I feel calm in my decision making? And how my inner decision process is meeting my logical decision process? And can I recover if something does happen, can I recover from misalignment a lot easier? And then lastly, on the act step, a question you can ask yourself is, um, do I feel more internally steady and incoherent, or sorry, do I feel more steady with myself, and do I feel like I'm bringing internal integrity to myself? Um, and these are different questions that you can bring forward as you start to practice each of the four steps. And most definitely, if you have any questions, you can feel free to reach out. But let me pause on any of that before we go on to this last slide. Does anyone have any closing questions for me? No, that was a lot, so appreciate your patience. Okay, great. Well, hopefully, I was able to answer your questions. I guess, Rebecca, if you want to go on to the next slide, if you, this is just my digital contact information. If you want to reach out, feel free. But I am on LinkedIn at Adam-R-Dickinson. You can feel free to reach out, and happy to support you on your journey. Oh, good, and I'm so glad. Oh, good. Yeah. I'm so glad it's been a long time coming, integrating both parts of who I am. So hopefully it was really helpful. So, all right. Well, Rebecca, over to you.
Adam, thank you so much. This is incredibly powerful. And I know that we're going to need to send some slides around to folks so that they'll have some powerful visual reminders of just the depth of the content that you shared and also the specificity of like what steps can they take next. I know I'm already thinking about like, okay, now how do I do this? And I think in sharing who you are, like all the parts of you, the journey, you have devised something um, that can be incredibly impactful for folks, and where it's not too like convoluted, it's not too intellectual. Like it makes a lot of sense to anybody, no matter where they are. In their internal processes, whether they're logical or whether they tend to be more intuitive. Um, I want to thank you for gifting us your presence, your expertise at a time when we truly need it. You will be able to find Adam's recordings on YouTube very soon. I will be emailing you all to let you know when you can find those. Adam, if you have any words for Adam, please go ahead and put them in the chat.